Jerk Theory, Monday, school documentary, and action.
Hello, Internet Void. I have returned to scream. So today I am going to briefly discuss my favorite movie when I was 12. Its cultural impact on the general public is approximately 0%. However, I persist because I need to talk about this movie. I have spent the past 8 years thinking about it like at least once a month, and I'm going to unpack it. I'm gonna just kind of heal some of my trauma, and it's gonna be a good time. First of all, I have spent the past 8 years of my life fully convinced that this movie stars Drew Seeley, who famously was the voice double for Zac Efron in the first High School Musical movie when the part was too high for him, and instead of like making it lower, they just brought in a different guy and thought we wouldn't notice, and we did. Sorry, Drew. It's not. Drew Seeley's not in this movie. I thought that the main actor's name was Drew Seeley and his character's name was Josh. In fact, the main actor's name is Josh Henderson, and the main character's name is Adam. So I don't know where I got all that from. I was wrong on pretty much every count. To be fair though, we're gonna have Josh Henderson over here, Drew Seeley over here. You tell me, if you had not seen this movie in 8 years, would you not confuse these two people? Look at them. Like, it's uncanny. Granted, there's basically one genre of white boy that was even cast in these movies in 2009, so it's not surprising, but I rest my case. I'm going to start with a brief overview of our main cast. We have Molly, who's played by Jenna Dewan. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, but you know who I mean. So she doesn't have much of a personality. She's like our leading lady, and she works with kids. She likes art, which is something. She also wants like a meaningful relationship, and that's like kind of her main thing throughout this movie, but you know, what are you gonna do? We have our main actor, who is Adam, played by, as we've discussed, Josh Henderson, whose whole character arc is that he had his heart broken one singular time, like several years ago, and is now a self-proclaimed jerk. So this whole movie is about Adam finally seeing a girl as like a person rather than an object to like have sex with, presumably. And like, I guess it's good that his conclusion is women are people and I should be respectful, and then the girls will like me more, or at least this specific girl that I really like will like me more. Because for some reason the movie wants us to think that all the other girls are like super into him when he's like being the jerk persona, which I do not understand. But 2009, we also have Amy, Molly's best friend. Her only personality trait besides being Molly's best friend is that she's kind of set up as this character foil to Molly, where Molly like wants to wait to have sex in a relationship, and Amy is like just kind of going out and doing her thing. And the movie kind of wants you to think that she's like super slutty or something. Like, it feels like that's the narrative that the movie is telling us about her. But in the movie, she has like 2 boyfriends. Like, she goes on a date with like maybe 2 or 3 people, and the movie takes place over the course of several months. So I don't really think that they supported that properly. On to Adam's friends. We have Dudley, who is one of 2 black characters in this movie. We have Chester, who they seem to have been setting up like a documentary CD plot with Chester. He always carries a camera around, but then it only comes up like one time during the climax. Like, it feels like they set up this whole thing just for like one moment, and then they didn't really do anything with it, even though at the beginning he says he's filming a documentary. We have Clinton, who the movie cannot decide if he's like an active pedophile and a racist, or if he's just like kind of a silly, quirky guy who's like a bit socially out of touch, which is a very interesting line for this movie to ride, and we will discuss it. We have Mark Dickinson, or Mark Dixon. They say it like both ways in this movie, I'm convinced. Yeah, he is. He's the worst. 0 redeeming qualities, pretty solid villain. A little bit one-dimensional, but again, every character in this movie is one-dimensional, so what do you expect? Oh my god. This movie is sapping my life force. Alright, now that you've met our main characters, let's get into the actual movie. I almost hesitate to call it, no, it is fair to call it a movie. I don't think it's fair to call it like a film. You know, it's not a good movie, but the bars for movies are relatively low even now, and in 2009 they were just underground. Let's get into the movie. We open on Drew's buddy Chester filming a documentary about how cool that Drew is. Oh my god, here I go again. In all of my notes, do I call this character Drew? Yeah. So I found out after I watched this movie, when I was doing the credits, that in fact I had gotten the character's name wrong this whole movie. So Drew, who is completely unrelated to this movie, might be mentioned once or twice when I mean Adam. Either way, we open on Adam's buddy, Chester, filming a documentary about how cool he is because he gets girls using the jerk theory. Adam refers to himself as an expert on the female species, which, gross. We meet Cynthia, the ex-girlfriend that broke his heart when she went on a date. Okay, so the reason that Cynthia broke his heart, canonically, this is established, we see it in the movie, is that it was prom, like, I don't know, sophomore, junior year. She and Mark get voted prom princess and prince. So she texts Adam to be like, hey, you know, like, we thought that we should go together since we were voted like this couple. And he doesn't see the text. So he shows up at her house and Mark opens the door all villainy and evil. And it turns out that Cynthia got her friend to go with Adam, who seems perfectly nice but is slightly shy. So like, ooh, how dare she? The whole thing that caused Adam's behavior, the root of his issues, is literally just him not checking his messages, which is a little bit weak. But everybody loves Drew. He's like so fucking cool. He's just the coolest person in this whole entire story. Oh, also, he's a rock star, which we see very early as the movie opens with this documentary like plot device from Chester, and they're running through the halls, and then they go out and have this like concert out on the football field where he's singing this song literally called The Jerk Theory. It is so 2009 that it hurts. I'll play like 20 seconds of it and you will see what I mean immediately, because it is so bad.
What is wrong with me? Or do I have to be a jerk so you want me? A jerk so we can be together happily, and next time I'll misuse you. If you ask me nice, then I'll even abuse you. Frequently I'll tell you you're fat and annoying. Frequently I'll tell you I don't want a girlfriend.
And the worst part is, when I was 12, I was convinced that this movie like had the best soundtrack known to man. Like this has fundamentally like shifted my perspective on music to the point where even now I'm 20 years old and I still listen to terrible music, and I blame this movie specifically. I blame this movie and even this song. So during the song, while the song is playing, we just see flashbacks of like Adam being like really shitty to all of his exes, like flirting with the waitress during a date, pulling up and like honking on the horn instead of going to get them at the door. And then, this is the worst part, is this girl comes out to meet him at the car. He's 30 minutes late, and then he like starts like eking along the road, like oop, 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 and she's like running, like trying to catch up. And he finally lets her in when she literally falls down on the ground. And she like gets up and she like flings her, you're such a jerk. And it's like, and he's like, yeah, I know. And she gets in the car and she's like, I can't even, she's like, why are you so hot? And I'm like, no. Stand up, girl. Have some self-respect. Again, 2009. So after the show, they have this agent that wants to sign them, but he says that he wants more range. So he wants something like more authentic, because apparently all of their songs are just Adam being like, ah ha ha, girls love me and I'm the worst, which, yeah, kind of one note. And so the agent says he wants something more authentic. I think he implies that Adam should like write a love song, and Adam's like, oh, I don't do those. Also, the agent is the second of the two black characters in the movie, and he has two scenes. He shows up once at the beginning and once at the end, and this movie's like, good job, us. And then Jenna breaks up with Mark, and she's commiserating with Amy about how she's tired of jerks. And Amy's response is literally to be like, oh yeah, like I keep sleeping with jerks or something great. Like they're really leaning into the Amy's a slut plot line, and I do not like it. Justice for Amy. She seems really sweet. And then also Jenna, Molly and Amy, they're talking about how much like jerks suck. And then Cynthia overhears, because they're talking about Mark, who they both dated. And Cynthia tells her that she dated Adam, and that Adam was like the sweetest guy she's ever dated. And so that comes up later, because Cynthia, throughout the movie, Cynthia is like kind of a rock. I mean, she's genuinely the best character here. She's like so generous. She's like always there for like emotional support. She's like, you know, I know you're a good person. I know you're better than this, even when he's actively being the worst. And he does not deserve Cynthia, truthfully. Luckily, Cynthia also broke up with Mark, so she's not stuck with him either. But honestly, I hope Cynthia's just single to college and just kind of like lives her life and does whatever she wants, because all the guys at the school suck. And they have this like weird sex ed scene where the priest, Father Bailey, is trying to explain hormones like really badly. Throughout the movie, he's kind of fumbling and stupid, but he seems like really well-intentioned. And there's a couple moments that indicate that he actually knows more than he lets on about his students' lives, which are really sweet, where he's like trying to help them out in like subtle ways. And it's like, oh, okay, like this is kind of a shtick. This scene, the entire point of it is like, aha, sex funny, 2009. And also Clinton gets to be the butt of the joke again because, oh, ho, ho, Clinton's gonna be a virgin forever. So this movie really kicks off with our, for lack of a better word, meet cute. Adam is just like hanging out his locker. He sees Molly running past with Amy and he's like entranced. So he like goes to Chester to like find out like what her deal is. Apparently, rumors are swirling about how she and Mark broke up. Mark obviously is telling everybody that he dumped her, but Chester tells Adam that the most credible stories are actually that she dumped him. And obviously since Mark is Adam's nemesis, now he's like obsessed with her. And so he just like, he has to go out with her. And so he like tries his usual lines on her. He's like trying to like hit on her, like he's trying to flirt with her, and it's just like not working. She's like just not interested. She totally blows him off.
Is that a friend of yours?
She'd like to be. What about you?
Well, I think we both know that I could be, but that's not the question.
Well, what is?
Do lines like that usually work?
And so the reason that she's not impressed, it feels a little bit, is because she's just different, you know? She's just special. She's not like, she's just, what's the phrase? But also it's the whole crux of the movie is that she won't settle for his terrible behavior and she gradually improves him. So it makes sense that at the start when he's actively participating in the terrible behavior, she's not interested. But the way that the movie plays it is very much like, oh my God, she's so special. She's so different. I have to have her. And it's like, I don't know. It definitely left a mark on 12-year-old Corinne, and I don't think for the better. So for the next few scenes, Adam tries to talk to Molly. She avoids him. He'll like try and stop her after school and she'll like run away, or like he'll like hit on her once or just like laugh and leave. Like she's not giving him the time of day. And then at one point the ex, Cynthia, confronts him and she's like, oh, you know, I know you're really a nice guy. And it kind of feels like the writer's like, see, audience, he's a nice guy. He's just misunderstood. Like he's just had his heart broken. And again, the way that he got his heart broken is so ridiculous. Like, are you seriously expecting us to believe that this man has so much trauma from not reading a text that he completely changed his entire personality just to attract more girls or something? Like, I don't buy it. Oh boy, exciting news, folks. We have reached our first guess what year this movie was made checkpoint as we meet a character by the name of Terry. Terry is the janitor at the spa store where Adam and all of his friends work, and our heroes spend like 5 minutes trying to figure out if Terry is a man or a woman. Like they literally bet on it. It's so gross because Terry is just kind of ambiguous in terms of gender. There's kind of a tall person, they have long hair. It's hard to like pin them down one way or the other. And apparently this is like a running joke between Adam's friend group. Like they're trying to like figure out like if Terry is a man or a woman. And it's like, guess what year this was made? But it's kind of funny that every attempt that they have to determine Terry's gender like results in a completely ambivalent answer. And so the lengths that the writers went to make sure that Terry always wins these conversations. It's actually kind of amusing because at some point they're trying to get Terry to fill out some form that they had already filled out, but that they're trying to get more information about them. It's so creepy. And so they're like, oh, well, what's your father's name? Terry goes, oh, my dad's name is Terry. And the boys like look at each other and like one of them like hands the other 5 and they go, oh, so you're named after your dad. Terry goes, actually, I'm named after both my mom and my dad. My mom's name is Teresa. And the boys like, ah, dang it, foiled again. Even though the whole scene is like kind of gross, that you're like making it a bet to like figure out somebody else's personal information that's really none of your business, the way that they go about Terry kind of handing their asses to them is genuinely kind of funny. And then there's another one where Terry says that they're going to take Brandy out for the weekend. They've called off for the weekend to take Brandy for a spa day. And the boy's like, oh, ha, 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 Brandy must be a woman, therefore Terry must be a man, because only heterosexual relationships exist. Turns out Brandy is a dog. 2009. This is for any young'uns who were, I don't know why I'm saying young'uns. I was 7 when this movie came out, but either way, in 2009, this was like just kind of the height of comedy, and the fact that it wasn't actively offensive at this point is like it was almost a good thing in 2009. Like, this wasn't just funny. This was like funny while being minimally offensive. Like, this was above the bar, which is just unfathomable. Back to the movie. After we meet Terry, there's this confessional scene. And this movie's actually genuinely kind of funny when it's poking fun at like the Catholic school or like the Catholic Church, because it really does so very like toothlessly, mostly through Father Bailey, because he's shown, as I mentioned, as being kind of a dope. But even though he's often the butt of the joke, he really does seem to like care about his students, and like at the end of the day, you know, he's well-intentioned and he knows more than he lets on about their lives. So for example, in this confessional scene, Adam goes to the confessional, and instead of actually confessing any sins, he just asks Father Bailey for advice about women. And so Father Bailey has like kind of a Joker moment. Adam is like, did you ever think about like having a normal life? And Father Bailey is like,
if by normal life you mean finding my soulmate and falling in love, and she's kind and nurturing and she loves me just as much as I love her in spite of my flaws, and we get married and have children, and I coach my son's baseball team, and one day walk my daughter down the aisle, they have kids, and so we're grandparents, and then we retire early, and I buy one of those huge RVs, like at least a 60-footer, satellite TV, and we travel around the whole country together. No, I've never thought of that.
like just like lays out this whole plan for his life, and then ends it with, no, I've never thought about that. And upon first viewing this when I was 12, this whole scene just kind of like, yeah, whatever, like get to the romance part of the movie. I was 12. But on rewatching, like, Father Bailey's story is actually kind of sad. It's implied that he had a thing with one of the nuns at this school, Sister B, and then like she actually broke his heart, not just misreading a text. And so they have this like, they're just like trapped in this, can't have a relationship, have this weird history. Like, I don't know why they didn't go more into that, because I think that could have been an interesting, I don't know, I just think it was interesting. As penance, he assigns Adam to volunteer at his little sister's art class's field trip to a museum that weekend. Little does Adam know, it's the art class that Molly teaches. So Father Bailey like clearly understands that Adam is like obsessed with Molly for whatever reason and wants an excuse to hang out with her, because he doesn't tell Adam. Adam literally shows up and his sister runs to Molly going, Molly! And Molly looks up and there he is. And so it's kind of a cute scene, actually, because the kids are like exploring the museum, which is also apparently a petting zoo. They have like goats and horses and stuff there, but they also have like dinosaur bones. So anyway, so they go to this museum / petting zoo. Adam apologizes to Molly for a bad joke he made earlier in the movie about her being a virgin, where he held out a piece of paper and was like, $10 for a virgin cell phone number, and a bunch of boys like took it and get paid him the money, and the joke was he'd actually give them Sister B's number, not Molly's, but it still wasn't very funny. So he apologizes, and it seems like a pretty genuine apology. This is kind of the start of his like character arc wanting to not be a bad person, or he's genuinely apologizing for his shitty joke. So they flirt like all day. Like we see like as they're moving throughout the museum, there's like kind of hanging out and like kind of getting to know each other. And then when he asks her out again, instead of no, she says maybe, which progress. So, and then after that, there's this party scene where Drew is just sitting on like a bench in front of this adoring crowd of like 10, 20 people. They're just gathering around like a little campers watching their counselor play the guitar. And he sings this love song that he wrote, clearly for Molly, while she's kind of sitting off in the distance, and she's kind of smiling at him, like she looks pleased. Time for a second break, because Clinton is on some bullshit again. So I didn't mention this earlier because I wanted to talk about his entire character arc at once, but yeah, Clinton is the third person in Adam's friend group. We've seen him before in the first performance where he was playing an unplugged bass, implying that he can't actually play the music, but they just include him to be nice because he's their friend and they feel kind of bad for him. And every scene at the hot tub store, he's doing something creepy. First he pees in the pool, and he wore like a really tiny thong. And then there was another scene where he creeped on like this couple attempting to buy a hot tub.
One night in this baby with the jet set on high is better than 8 Chinese guys from the mall working you over.
What does that mean?
Clinton, you got a phone call. All right, sorry about that, guys. We tried to have him fired, but his dad kind of owns the joint. Hey, Connie, these wonderful folks here would like to purchase the Superjet 5000. Let's give him a Clinton discount, huh?
Which prompts Adam to reveal that Clinton's dad owns the store, so they can't fire him. And he also offers them the Clinton discount, as though this is like a thing that Clinton does often, just like weirding out the customers. But his dad owns the store, so they can't fire him. And when I first watched this movie, I remember just feeling kind of bad for Clinton, because he's generally presented as harmless, if socially inept, and he's always a butt of the joke. However, I'm gonna list Clinton's crimes in ascending order of severity. Number 1, assuming a larger woman is pregnant in a hot tub store, referring to massage therapists as Chinese men working over a potential customer, which is what prompts the Clinton discount, peeing in the hot tub with other people in it, attempting to discern Terry's gender in a very invasive and weird way, and betting on it. Okay, now we've gotten to the real stuff. So in this party scene, which is what inspired my Clinton rant, he dresses up as a gay man. I say he dresses up as a gay man. What he means is he dresses up as his idea of what a gay man would be like, which is to say, like, I think he has like a weird like scarf on. He has like a scarf around his head. He has like eye makeup on. He's like talking all weird, trying to do some kind of like, the whole thing made me really uncomfortable, but that's not even the worst part. He also does literal blackface.
Hey, my brothers, what's happening?
Throughout the movie, he's getting increasingly desperate, trying to figure out how to attract women who are absolutely repulsed by him. And one of the first things that he tries is a drastic dark tan. And he literally justifies his behavior by saying, and I quote, "Chicks dig a black dude." Clinton is definitely in the wrong here. It's not played like he's doing a good thing, so I get that it could be worse considering this was 2009, but it is still a joke that they did not have to make. Like, at all. They just didn't have to. Also, Adam's other friend, whose name is mentioned literally one time, and it's Dudley. And Dudley is one of 2 black characters in the movie, again, tells Clinton that he's actually kind of fresh, which really reads as the writers kind of co-signing his behavior. Like they think that by having the black character there to witness it and be like, oh, this is bad, but it's also kind of funny, it feels like they're wandering into a gray area of not encouraging blackface, obviously, but almost of being like, hey, you know what? It was funny, so we're gonna stick with it. Like, it just feels... What do you want to bet if I looked up the writers of this movie? They would all be white. Hang on. Director, Scott S. Anderson. White. Okay, writers, Scott S. Anderson and Abraham Taylor. White. Even more white. Yeah, it feels very much like, hey, you know what? You probably could have done this joke worse, but you did not have to do it at all. Like, they could have had him just... There's another scene where he dresses up as a cowboy. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's funny. Like, he wears, like, a little cowboy hat and, like, cowboy boots. And he's walking around like a southern drawl. Like, that's... Sure, yeah, do more of that. It didn't have to be blackface. It didn't have to be blackface. They did not have to do that. And they just decided to because they thought it was funny. And it's not. It's just weird. Oh, and also, his last crime is there's a scene where the friends report...
He's went through the whole high school directory already. He's now working on the 8th graders. Sweet.
Looking for girls to take to prom. And the way that it's said, it feels like they're making a joke about something that's actually happening rather than just like theoretically being like, oh, haha, it would be crazy if you did that. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. So yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about the character of Clinton right now. And it's weird because usually when someone in the movie does bad stuff, like they're the villain. Like Mark is the worst, obviously, and I'll go into him later, but he does a bunch of bad stuff. And the movie is like, yeah, he's doing the bad stuff because he's a bad guy. But it kind of feels like Clinton's actions are like excused. Like the movie wants us to think he's just some poor guy who's like just kind of socially inept, but fundamentally well-intentioned. And I'm not sure that his actions justify that kind of response. Like, all of his friends still hang out with him. Like, when he does weird stuff, they just kind of laugh it off, like, oh, haha, that's Clinton. I think if they wanted to create a character that was, like, socially awkward or, like, the weird, like, funny friend of the group to make the others seem cooler when they're just normal dudes, they didn't have to go about it this way. I think that's fundamentally my problem. Is because I vividly remember when I was 12, I watched this movie and I felt really bad for Clinton because he was always the butt of the joke. And now I'm watching it back and I'm like, yeah, but the jokes that he was the butt of were also really messed up. Don't like it. But yeah, it was 2009, back to the A plot. So Molly seemed to be uncomfortable throughout the beginning of the movie with the way that Adam talks about women, his casual disrespect, his bad manners, etc. And so when they start going out, she decides to kind of fix him up. She's definitely emboldened by Cynthia because she knows that he has the potential to like be a good person. You know, it definitely feels like she's just trying to get him back to where he was with Cynthia. She doesn't tell him this, but it kind of feels like she's like, hey, I know that he has the potential to be a good guy, to be a good boyfriend. And so if I can get that from him, then I will date him. Otherwise, I'm not interested. So there's this funny montage, which is set to kind of a genuinely sweet song that Adam wrote for her. And Molly like just slowly guilts him into acting polite, such as coming to her door instead of just honking the horn from the car, like opening her car door for her, which I think is a little bit overboard, but I mean, I see the point they were trying to make about how he has manners now, so I'll take it with a grain of salt. Actually listening to her during the dinner date instead of flirting with the waitress, basically all of the behavior that we saw earlier in that montage that all the other girls were like really into, she's like just not letting him get away with. And so he's like gradually improving over the course of the montage. It's like a training montage, like in Rocky, except he's just getting more polite. But it's kind of sweet because he's like visibly making an effort to like be a good partner and like take note of her preferences. And like he does like a little fist bump when he remembers to open her car door for her without her having to like stand there doing her little I'm waiting stance. This montage, when I was 12, I was convinced was the definition of romance. This was just the peak. Like, nothing could top this for me. Anyway, so he gradually improves over the course of the montage. He's visibly making an effort. And then the final form of reformed Drew is he brings her flowers when he goes to pick her up. She's, like, really delighted. She, like, casually kisses him for the first time. She goes in to put the flowers away. And he just, like, kind of, like, whirls around, like, looking around, like, grinning like an idiot. It was really cute. The magic of this movie that enthralled me when I was 12 has not apparently entirely lost its grip on me, because I was watching the scene like, oh, this scene quite literally made me cry in middle school. Like, this was peak romance. So after she's like kind of got him in ship shape relatively, there's this school dance scene where Amy and Chester are introduced and immediately begin the most healthy relationship in the entire movie, because they only talk about it like twice. They're just casually dating and like they're not like trying to play weird games or trying to manipulate each other. it's pretty, I think the reason that it's so healthy is because the writers didn't focus on it. And if they had decided to focus on it, they would have made it a lot more rocky because that's the movie. But as is, it's kind of sweet. And so Drew and Molly dance. Adam and Molly dance. And Adam shows like regret for acting like a jerk, telling her that he wasn't himself for a long time, but Molly made him reconsider things because he actually sees her as a person now. And again, when I was 12, I thought this was so sweet. Like, oh my gosh, like he's back to like who he really is. He's like a nice guy now, because she was just like, And now it makes me feel kind of icky, because it's very much that idea of like, oh, like men just like need a good woman to fix them. Like, you have to see the potential. And I don't know if I agree with that, because at the same point, like, yeah, having good people in your life will bring out the best part of yourself. But also, it's not their obligation to make you a better person. And this movie is very much like walking the line between Adam wanting to be a better person because Molly likes that, and Molly making him be a better person. There's some moments where like it feels like it's really like it's coming from him. Like he genuinely just wants to date her. He wants to like improve. He wants to be like a normal functioning member of society. And then there's other moments where it really feels like it's all coming from her. And she's like, I will not accept this behavior. And that's why he improves, because he wants to date her, not because he wants to be better, if that makes sense. Okay, so we're almost to the main climax of the movie. One more interlude. This one will be short. This movie thinks it's hilarious for one character to be on the phone with another character and then talk to somebody else standing next to them. So, for example, there's a scene where Adam gets home from a date with Molly. He's on the phone with Chester. He asks his sister, "What are you still doing up?" And Chester answers like he has no idea that that wasn't meant for him. Like, Chester's like, "Oh, well, I just thought I'd check in with you and Molly." And Adam never explains himself. Why would he not just be like, "Oh, sorry, I was talking to my sister," and continue the conversation? People do not do this in real life. If you were talking to your friend in person and they were on the phone and they accidentally said something to you that the person on the phone thought was for them, they would clarify, right? Like if you were like, "Hey, do you want to go skiing this weekend?" And they were like, "I don't really like skiing." The person on the phone is like, "Okay." They go, "Oh, sorry, I was talking to my friend." They don't just move on. The movie does it like twice. And it just like thinks it's so funny. Like, oh, ha ha ha, he was talking to his sister, but Chester thinks he's talking to him. But they never said it straight. How is that funny? This has bothered me for 8 years. Maybe this is more about me than it does about the movie. Either way, okay, we're gonna do a quick review of the names before I get to the climax of this movie, because there's gonna be a lot of names. So I'm gonna put up pictures, or like I'm gonna list their defining traits, and then we're gonna move on to the climax. This will be short. Okay, we've got Adam, main character, he's in love with Molly. We've got Molly, also into Adam, formerly dated Mark. We've got Molly's best friend, Amy, who's dating Chester. Chester is Adam's best friend, he's the one with the camera. Back to Mark, he hates Adam, they're like nemesises, and Molly broke up with him. All right, ready? This is gonna be a lot. So throughout the relationship, a recurring issue is that Adam really wants to have sex with Molly, and she wants to wait because a relationship built on sex makes them more likely to cheat when an attractive opportunity presents itself, which is like, yeah, fair enough. Things are going really well between Adam and Molly, despite that one hang-up, but they're both like kind of insecure about it. Like, it's just something that like, it's always kind of lingering there, a little bit out of sight. Like, they're both kind of dancing around it, but it's kind of like a recurring issue. So the whole main conflict starts. Adam is hanging out with his friend at the hot tub store, and Molly calls him to make plans for that night. But then she's suddenly called by Amy, and Amy's just completely incomprehensible, just shrieking and crying and like clearly in need of emotional support. But before Molly can get to the bottom of it, she gets another call from Mark, who tells her that he's coming over tonight because he really needs to talk to her, even though she clearly wants to tell him to fuck off, but she doesn't because she's this polite little Catholic girl. So Adam and Chester, who is dating Amy, figure out that Amy's cat has died. And Molly cancels on Adam for that night to support her best friend, obviously, because she's such a mess. She doesn't want her to be alone. So Molly has Amy come over to her house to spend the night, just to like hang out and like not be alone, because she's really distraught about her cat dying. Presumably a couple hours later, Chester pulls up to Molly's house with his camera and a new kitten for Amy, because he wants to film her reaction to the kitten. Very cute kitten. Mark arrives while they're there. So Chester leaves the camera running in the front hall while he and Amy go to get the cat something to eat in the kitchen. Molly tells Mark it's not a good time. He won't take the hint. He asks her to prom. And then he tells Molly that Adam is seeing Cynthia, the ex, again. And Molly's like, no, that's ridiculous. I trust Adam, and like completely blows him off. But while Mark is in her house, he replaces a photo of Molly with a photo of them at prom, hoping that Adam sees it if he ever goes over there. Which is just the levels of manipulation that Mark accomplishes all at once at the end of this movie is like unprecedented. Like, he really is like kind of lurking in the background like an evil little shark the whole movie, and then at the end he's like, bam! And he's just ruining relationships left and right. And then the plot thickens. Adam knocks on the door with flowers because he's trying to be nice to Amy to score points with Molly, which is in and of itself kind of scummy. Mark answers the door because Molly had to get something in the kitchen. Mark opens the door for Adam. He tells him that Amy's not there, implying that Molly canceled on Adam just to hang out with Mark. And then he also has a snide crack of like, oh, this like must be deja vu or whatever because of the last time when he opened the door when Adam showed up to take Cynthia to prom. And so he tells Adam that Amy is not there, he's just there. He takes the flowers, and then he tells Molly that he brought the flowers himself to ask her to prom. Okay, you're following? So at school the next day, Adam tells Molly to meet him at the hotel steakhouse in the town for their rescheduled date because she canceled the night before. So it's actually a ploy to get her to break up with him by pushing the sex boundary. So he gets a blank hotel key from the receptionist, but she doesn't know it's blank. And he says that he wants to take the relationship to the next level. And she's obviously kind of like, I don't know, like we've talked about this, like this is making me kind of uncomfortable. And so he says he's been really patient with her. And then he yells at her for just expecting him to wait indefinitely. And then he says that he thinks that they're just too different and she can't do this anymore. And it's like, talk to her. Hey, talk. She's right there. You have her at the date. Talk to her. Hey, what happened yesterday? She'll tell you. So Adam writes a very dark and edgy song about this. His fans love it. The agent dude in his second scene of the movie, and last, I believe, is not impressed. He's like, you know, you've shown me like attitude, you showed me anger, but you've never shown me your soul. And it's like, yeah, fair enough, but he's also supposed to be like 17. It's kind of a lot to expect of a child in 2009. Oh, and Clinton is a cowboy now. This is when Clinton is a cowboy. Less offensive. Get your bags on. Anyway, so the agent refuses to sign them. He hasn't seen enough. Adam smashes his guitar. And then finally Chester snaps and like calls him out for being awful to Molly. So Adam tells Chester he saw Mark at Molly's house. He got burned again for being the nice guy. And then he runs away before Chester can like explain to him what actually happened. So he tries to go and have like revenge sex in his car with the ex Cynthia, who is indisputably the most ethical person in this movie. And he stops and she's like, hey, like what's wrong? Like I can tell like something's not right. And she has this really sweet quote about like, you know, like, you don't always talk about your feelings, but your music does it for you, like, implying that she, like, knows that he's still in love with Molly, and she's like, you know, don't do this, like, go be with your girlfriend, or, I don't know if they're even still dating anymore, I guess ex-girlfriend. So he goes back into the club, and Chester and Amy finally set him straight about what happened the night Mark showed up to Molly's house, because obviously they have the video, and it kind of feels like this is the only thing that they were going to use Chester's camera for, which is a bit of a bummer because he's setting it up like he's going to do a documentary. So I thought they could do a, did you ever watch that movie Geek Charming? The plot device is that he's filming a documentary and then at the end of it, like, she watches the documentary and it's like his confession of love for her or something. I thought they were going to do that when I first watched the movie. Obviously now I knew they weren't going to do that. But when I first watched the movie, I thought it was going to be like, oh yeah, in the documentary at the end, they'll reveal it at the prom. And he'll be like, but, like, my jerk theory was flawed because I couldn't predict you or something like that. And I was like, oh yeah, that'll be great. No. The only reason that they're setting up that camera thing is just so that Chester can record Molly meeting Mark at the door and be like, this isn't a good time, go away, I don't like you. Which really feels like a loss. I guess it would have made the movie too long. As is, it is 1 hour and 29 minutes and 23 seconds. So they were really trying to hit that hour 30 exactly, which I can respect. Either way, I feel like it was a missed opportunity. Anyway, So he obviously like feels bad now that he actually knows what happened, but he's too late because she's already left with Mark and they're going to prom together. Bum, bum, bum. So he goes to Molly's house. She won't answer the door because he was a dick. There's a dramatic like time passing musical montage while Adam writes a song and Molly paints, and Adam calls the agent, whose name is Jerry. This is the only time we hear the agent's name, and tells me he has something to show him. And then finally, it's implied that he takes a couple of days off school, or like maybe this is over the weekend. He finally returns to school. All of his friends give him just like the hero's welcome, like, Adam, you're back, we love you, you're the best. And so he gives his friends some new sheet music that he's written over the course of the montage. And then he gives Mark the prom tickets he had purchased before he and Molly broke up. And the audience can sense a plot unfolding, a scheme, if you will. So, oh, and also the friends make fun of Clinton for apparently having gone through the entire high school directory looking for a prom date and now being on to the 8th graders. Ew, I've discussed that. We've finally gotten to the scene that just left an impenetrable mark on 12-year-old Corinne's perceptions of romance. This song was stuck in my head for literally years. I could sing the whole thing right now if you wanted me to, because I just watched the stupid movie again. Are you ready, Internet Void? Here we go. Prom. Finally. Molly's dancing with Mark. She's obviously kind of bummed about it. Clinton just wanders through the dancers, being creepy, the usual. So Mark starts getting like really handsy. Amy rescues Molly and asks Mark to get them drinks because she's in on the plan. And then Clinton signals to a guy who spills Mark's drinks on him. Amy's like visibly thrilled. It's really funny. Mark leaves the gym where the prom is to get himself cleaned up in the bathroom. And the band leaves the stage for their break. Here comes our boy Josh. So he sits down at the piano. There's like the cinematic shot of like everybody moving aside to clear a path for Molly to see him, while the camera just like zooms in through the audience. The audience is like parting like the Red Seas. Then you get to Molly and she's like, so Josh sings a song called Tell Me It's Okay, which is an inside reference from something that they said earlier.
I like you like this.
What, vulnerable?
Yes,
Why?
because you're more emotional than physical.
Well, do I have a choice?
You know what I mean.
I do. I don't trust it. And I need you to let me know that it's okay.
And 12-year-old Corinne was like, and 20-year-old Corinne's like, so he sings the song. I swear to God, 12-year-old me was genuinely convinced the song was a musical masterpiece. I literally figured out how to play the song on the piano. I would just like rewatch the scene over and over. So Josh's minions. Oh my God. Have I been calling Adam Josh? I'm doing it again. Okay, Adam's minions steal Mark's prom tickets. So the nun at the door doesn't let him back in. Sister B is the nun at the door. Because she and Father Bailey are like the only named clergy people, because they didn't want to like have to create a whole new cast of characters. The only ones that really matter are the teenagers. So Adam and Molly hold very sincere eye contact during this whole song. She's just in the crowd like, and he's on the keyboard like, but just before the final chorus, she just like shakes her head and she runs off. And Amy like catches her and she explains what really happened, which I don't know why people didn't try that before, but Amy explains what really happened. Adam brought the flowers, not Mark, implying that Mark had lied to him to get him to go away. And Molly's like shocked. And then she runs out of the gym. And Amy just like stares at Josh apologetically, like, I'm sorry, I tried. And so the song ends. And Josh just heartbroken. And Adam is just like heartbroken. Just like wanders away from the piano, like just standing on the stage, like. And the camera like pans and Molly's standing behind him on the stage. So he turns around and sees her and she walks up, she goes, it's okay. And then she kisses him on the stage in front of everybody. And Mark finally gets back into the gym, but Sister B trips him as he's coming in through the door. So he just sprawls embarrassingly on the floor just in time to see Molly making out with Adam on stage. My only notes for that part of the scene are LMAO, LOL. Oh, and also this is the point in my notes where the credits started rolling. And I realized for the first time that I had, and I quote, this is what I wrote, oh my God, would you guys believe it if I said the character's name really was Adam, but the actor's name was Josh? This is so embarrassing. I'm such a fake fan. Holy shit. Why did I think he was Drew Seeley? Who even is Drew Seeley if not this guy? So in my defense, let's look at these pictures again. Here's our boy Josh Josh Hutcherson. That's a different person, Josh Henderson. Here's Drew Seeley. You see where I'm coming from. In conclusion, I have 10 pages of notes about this stupid movie, but honestly, unpacking all this and like finally getting the plot points straight after 8 years remembering like a blur with only the first montage of Molly fixing Adam and then like the prom scene, it's been kind of therapeutic for me. I have a few parting thoughts to throw into the void, and then I think I can be done with this movie once and for all. At its core, the story's pretty harmless. Guy gets his heart broken, becomes a dick, meets a girl that doesn't tolerate his shitty behavior, fixes himself. It's almost giving like, it's kind of like a really like Walmart version, not even Walmart, like a dollar store version of Pride and Prejudice almost, in certain aspects of the idea of like, bad boy, or at least impolite boy, shitty behavior is not tolerated, he fixes himself. But this one does it way worse. Either way, it's a pretty standard Disney Channel original movie level plot. It's not that deep. But the blatant racism, homophobia, and just Catholicness of it all makes it kind of hard to watch in retrospect. There was just so many weird little quips about like girls and like virginity, and like I definitely just absorbed a lot of stuff into my little sponge brain at 12 and now I'm rewatching being like, holy shit, that was not good. Why did I think that was normal behavior? So at some point, this movie's just making fun of like the Catholics' whole like, oh, you're not allowed to have sex until marriage or else you go to hell thing, including 2 very funny scenes involving the first of the sex ed class, and then there's an STD seminar where Danny Bonaducci is the guest speaker. And again, I'm going to say it one more time, but Father Bailey is genuinely kind of funny. Like the fumbling, out of touch father figure, like frantically trying to be supportive and helpful trope will always have my heart. His drama with Sister B, who's the nun, is honestly a better love story than the one that they chose to focus on. I would pay to see a movie about their history. Unfortunately, the movie thinks that it can take on more topics than just a cliche romance story and lightly poking fun at Catholicism. And that is where it starts to make mistakes. I'm not completely media literate. I understand that having something in a movie doesn't necessarily mean the creators are supporting it, even in the case of blackface. I mean, there's a pretty famous Community episode where Chang paints his... If you don't know Community, you don't know who Chang is. Where this one character, he paints his face black while they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and he's trying to roleplay his elf character, and the entire group is like horrified that he doesn't seem to realize that it's obviously unacceptable behavior even in a technically harmless context. And so the joke is that Chang is just an idiot. But this is not that. Because throughout the movie, Clinton's behavior ranges from socially inept to predatory, and all of his gaffes are treated with the same energy, which is just to laugh it off. I mean, his friends like Adam, Chester, Dudley, they kind of, we're supposed to sympathize with them, right? They're the main characters. They're not presented as ethically dubious. We're supposed to like them. And they hang out with him. They implicitly co-sign his behavior every time. They just kind of like roll their eyes and turn away instead of like stopping him from bothering women or doing blackface or dressing in a weird gay stereotype or... And it just feels very tone deaf. Again, 2009. But even for 2009, it's like, and this movie wasn't directed towards like grown adults who obviously know that this behavior is unacceptable. It was explicitly for teenagers. It was rated PG-13. And the attitudes expressed about gender identity, sexual preference are so indicative of the time. And I fully understand that things were different in 2009 in terms of expectations of respect. I think the standards are higher now for not making fun of people for things they can't change, whether that's their sexual orientation or their gender identity or their race, or even just like small things like their nose, their hair color. Like obviously people still do it, but you know that it's bad to say words that have a history of being used in offensive ways, whether that's obviously the N-word. Not even gonna touch that, and nobody in this movie even says that. But like Adam, our main character, who we're supposed to root for, literally says the R word. I'm not gonna get into that, I don't want to say it in this movie, but you know what I mean. And I didn't even mention it because it was 2009, and even though it was never an acceptable word to say, there was a lot less awareness at the time. I understand it's not exactly the same as it is in 2022. It wasn't like that in 2009. I understand that, but come on. Can't you leave the blackface and implied grooming out of your kids' movie? Like, there's one scene where, I told you about this, Clinton decides his new thing is going to be like acting like a cowboy. So he wears a cowboy hat and like a bolo tie, and he goes around talking like a southern accent. It's like, just do more of that. Like, you could have him do like a weirdly masculine, like gym bro look, or like maybe like pretends to like pick up an instrument that he obviously doesn't play to impress girls, which they kind of already touched on. Like, it didn't have to be racist or homophobic. You don't have to be racist or homophobic to be funny. You don't. That's true now, and that was true in 2009. So all of that really bothered me. But I think the main thing that really impacted me, and probably a lot of other little girls that watch this movie, is there's a lot of really casual, like, slut shaming and almost misogyny. And even though the movie is trying to break some of the stereotypes, like a girl is a bad person if she has sex with multiple men, whereas men are supposed to go around having sex with lots of women because that's like what they're supposed to do. Like, it feels like this movie was trying to be like, no, that's not true. See, he's only happy in the end when he like becomes a nice guy again, but it's still kind of implicitly upholding those values because the characters that are seen as like easy or like slutty are like criticized for it. Whereas Molly, who is our main female character, who we're supposed to believe is like just the best love interest ever, her defining character trait is that she's waiting to have sex. I think for a 12-year-old, it just doesn't have the amount of brain power that you develop after, I don't know, 18. And I mean, I'm not even fully developed yet. I'll probably watch this movie again. Probably not. If I watched this movie again when I was 35, I'm sure I'd get a lot more stuff out of it that's going over my head now because I'm still stupid. My point is, a lot of the really unhealthy relationship goals and the idea of like you have to fix a guy, and there's some really like subtle like quips and values enforced by the movie kind of like wormed their way into my brain at 12, and I don't think it was a good thing. I'm not saying this movie shouldn't have been made. I'm saying I shouldn't have watched it. But I feel better about it now that I've watched it, really just analyzed it, kind of beaten the dead horse. And I feel like I've worked through most of the things that I absorbed from this movie that I should not have. And I think I'm done with it. So I'm gonna end this here. I send it into the void. Bye.